listening wherever you are. This is Ask Me Anything session. So we're here to take your questions, concerns. We're talking about obviously the pivot that has occurred, the course correction that we've taken over the last couple of weeks. Just briefly on that, we're in a listening phase. What we're trying to do right now is we're trying to. It was a step that I think I won't even say missed, just wasn't as clear as it should have been. One of the things that we really needed to do once the Constitution was enacted on chain was give the DReps their first due. They have to, if there's authority that they want, it's theirs and it's their decision to take it. If they've got authority that they want to delegate, they have the ability to delegate it. But we have to listen to the DReps as a whole. As speaking as an Intersect person for a moment here, we have to listen to the DReps and do what it is that they want us to do. They have to delegate authority to us if we're to take any role on in this space. So I think that was probably the most important part of this pivot, is that we as a community of DReps first make the decision, what parts should Intersect handle and what parts do the DReps want to keep for themselves? And I think that's a good consideration and an important one. So so that's when I kind of wanted to start from, is that, getting from DReps, what are the things that you want to keep responsibility for? What are the parts of this process that you believe belong to you as a body, and what pieces of this do you feel that you need most support? And so that's where I'm hoping that we can start today. But we are open to any questions, any suggestions, any concerns. And so I think the bottom line for that is just kind of give what we usually do here. We say, raise your hand if you have a question, and then we'll recognize based on the hands raised. You can ask your question, try to keep your question or statement under about 2 minutes. And then if you have a follow-up question, one follow-up is fine. But if you have more than one, it would be appreciated that you go to the back of the queue and let other people speak before we take your next follow-up. So with that, welcome everybody, and happy to see any hands that might be raised.
First of all, hi Lloyd, hi everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Thanks for hosting these sessions. I think it's especially now very necessary. And one thing, I've read the blog post, right, that introduces the changes many times now, and I know there's still a lot of things ongoing and a lot of things that still need to be defined. But maybe just a question for you. One thing I think where I have the biggest question mark is this section where it says, once DRep refine a short list of proposals, they will be submitted in a budget info action for on-chain approval. I'm just wondering, like, what are your thoughts around this refinement process? Will DReps work together? Will you support them? Will Intersect support them? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Nico. And yeah, from a perspective, from my personal perspective, there, what I see in that is I see a group of meetings. Some will be virtual, like this, in person. Some would be asynchronous. Some would also be like literal in-person small meetups. Like, we keep using the pizza party analogy. You get, how many people can you get around a pizza and have a discussion, kind of thing. So we can have lots of those. There is some tooling considerations that have to be done for that. I don't think they have to be super advanced tools or anything like custom built. I think we can use a lot of what's already out there. But basically, doing similar to what we did for the Constitution, but on a different scale, not trying to have a big meeting with a bunch of people but instead, like, get 5 to 10 of your friends together, have a discussion on the budget, send your inputs to this address kind of thing, right? So a scaled down version of what we did for the Constitution. I think that's important. I think that's a good way for DReps to flex their muscles, as it were, and kind of learn to, gather their own communities and, and do that. And again, virtual meetings like that, in-person meetings like that, however people want to run them, to gather a lot of that feedback first, and then taking the aggregate of that data and publishing it and sharing with the DReps and saying, hey, here's where we've gotten to. So again, this is very similar to the Constitution in that respect. And then we do see at least some kind of a consolidation meeting. I think the consolidation meeting needs to be something along the lines of an in-person plus virtual. Like, it has to be is super inclusive. There's all kinds of issues with DReps not all of them wanting to be public, obviously, and things like that. So it has to be like this, as inclusive as possible, kind of wrap up where we bring everybody together, and whether they're physically in a room or virtually in a room or some combination, hybrid, both, we have to come to a consolidation. Does Intersect support that? I think yes. I think that's actually one of Intersect's best possible roles, is something along those lines, something where we act as a facilitator, for the DReps, so that they can gather and they come to consensus on it, and then we put a consensus item on chain. Now that could be multiple consensus items, like kind of, again, following the lead of the DReps, they could say, hey, we want to put these items out because we think they're ready, and we want to keep working on these other 5 or 10 items over here. That's totally fine, and we just want to be that supportive body that helps them make their desires met in that way. Is that helpful, Nico? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, Kineric. Hey, Kineric. Good morning or good afternoon to you. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm just fine, and I hope you guys are doing well. So, could you just give like a brief, let's say, status quote? What have been going on, let's say, the last 7 days from Intersect? What do you know other interest parties have been doing? And yeah, just give us like an umbrella overview of what's the status.
Absolutely. So, so in general, obviously, it came about 2 weeks ago now. It came to kind of a fever pitch, right? We got to the point where, kind of, there was some pretty big problems. Things weren't going the right direction. So, we did a lot of putting our heads together, a lot of thinking, a lot of talking. What can we do? Where are we going wrong? The biggest thing that came up, obviously, was that the DReps have not yet given Intersect any direct delegated authority yet. And that was like, okay, that's a place where you stop and you say, we got to get that first. So it was like, okay, let's put out a plan where the DReps can be the first line, and then they can tell us what they want to do. And so that was kind of that's what this all looks like, right? That's where this has gone to, is now we're, it's like, let's just put the whole thing in front of the DReps, let them make decisions, and say, you know what, that's right there is too much for us right now. We're not ready. We don't have the tooling. Why don't you guys do that for us? Now that's reasonable. That says, sure, we'll do that. And they can even, and I think this is super important, do that for us for now. Like, we may change our mind next year, next week, but like, for now, take this on. These are things that we think you can do well for us as DReps. And then we do have, at that point, we have a delegated authority. And that makes a lot of sense from Intersect's perspective, that we are actually given what it is we're supposed to be doing. We have some good ideas, like I said, that facilitation of stuff, gathering data. We know that we can be a countersign party for contracts. We have areas where we know, like, it makes a lot of sense, but ultimately we passed the Constitution, and when we passed that Constitution, we as ADA holders, ADA owners, delegated our authority to the DReps, right? And so now we have to honor that position and let the DReps take over. And so really the last couple of weeks has been, how do we make sure that we have a means to talk to the DReps effectively? Because that's already something, it's its own challenge. And then once we know how to, once we've figured out how to talk to them effectively and gotten information from them that of what they want, then we can proceed. And all of this has to, at some point, be backed up by on-chain actions, right? But every time you introduce an on-chain action, it's 6 epochs, right? So we're balancing how do we get the off-chain pieces, things like surveys. I love what tempo.vote is doing with the temperature check now. That's one possible tool we're looking at. I know Logan at Clarity DAO, he's got a tool. There's Adam Rush and the Summon folks. They have a tool. So like there's tooling in the community that'll allow us to have conversations with DReps, and maybe we don't even just use one. Maybe it's multiple tools. And then there's of course GovTool, and there's the forum on GovTool that can be used as well. So there's lots of options, and then there's social options, things like the DRep forum. So we were talking about that, and the DRep collective. Those are both kind of forming up and getting their feet under them as far as ways for DReps to gather and converse about things. So that's been what the last couple of weeks has been how do we, best address the DReps where they are today, get some feedback from them on what they want Intersect to take on from this responsibilities that they have. Like, let's not make any mistake here. They actually have this authority. It's theirs. So how do we now migrate to letting them take that authority and then delegate whatever part of that authority they feel comfortable delegating to us, and do as much of the actual delegating through info actions. So that's been the last 2 weeks, Keneric.
Thank you.
Thank you. Phil Lewis. Phil, do you want to help? You want to share your question out loud, or you want us to have our have one of our people read it from in here? Yeah. And Phil, I definitely I have similar concerns and similar worries, Phil, about whether or not we're rushing into any part of this. But what did come forward, like I said earlier, what came forward there is the fact that we don't have the delegated authority right now to do more than that. The DReps do. We actually have an on-chain action, the new constitution action, that put the DReps in charge here. So I actually I thought that was the most important thing of Andrew Westbury when he put his 20% or 10% tax. When he did his nerd out video, he said the important thing here isn't whether we get a 20% tax or 10% tax. It's that we have an on-chain action that says what our tax rate's going to be. And I got to take that to heart a little bit. That is a real assessment of the situation we're in. We really do have to make these decisions as a community, even if it's going to be uncomfortable, even if it makes, and I've heard all the concerns, and I have the same worries. They actually keep me up at night a little bit. The idea that if we don't find a way to get the DReps talking to each other, that we either extend it to where we have people running out of funds, or we can't, we lose ground because of the bear market, bull market cycles, or whatever. I've seen and heard all those things, and they're the same concerns I share. My hope is that by reaching out now and by starting to have more of these sessions again, and getting some good surveys out to the DReps, and then publishing that information, we'll be able to say, hey, the DReps do want us to take on these few roles. I'll even roll that back a little further. We did really good work on trying to establish a set of really good documents, right? And I think we did that. I think we established a good set of potential budgets. And I think now the next step for us is to take these potential budgets, hand them to the DReps, and let them use those along with anything else that the community provides us over the next few months. I hope that's helpful. Nicholas. Yeah, Nico, go ahead.
Thank you, Lloyd. And maybe first of all, not a question, but a statement. So I've talked to some lawyers also within the Cardano Foundation, and in our interpretation, Intersect was definitely in their right to with the process V1. So they did not, in our opinion, it was not violating the constitution in any way with the initial part of the process. In our interpretation, I think that's very important to mention. So Intersect was perfectly in its right to find a version and a process for that. So yeah, from that perspective, I think it's very important to just also say that Intersect did nothing wrong here.
Thank you.
Yeah, really. And then my question that I saw now a few times, and I think that would be really important to get some clarity on, is this: there is this perception, and hopefully it's only a perception, right? That the board of Intersect acted in a unilateral way, right, without having the necessary backing by the committees or anything. Maybe you could talk about like how does this work in Intersect? The change was proposed by, I mean, I know I'm a budget committee observer, but just that we have that also in the public.
Sure, exactly. And so yeah, it was definitely not a unilateral decision. There was there's a lot of feedback. There's thousands of entries in in our sentiment tracking that showed that there were significant problems along the way with the acceptance of Intersect leading the way through this. That was the concern. The concerns they they were raised, and again, and I mean, everybody knows Charles raised a concern in an X space, and that was kind of the moment where things stopped and we went to a restart. That is true. But Charles wasn't acting alone. If you listen to the X space, there had a lot of people that came in, and a lot of people said very similar things to what he was saying, and a lot of it reflected what was in the sentiment tracking as well, was that there was definitely and absolutely problems with the approach we were taking. There was concerns that it would be too much authority to Intersect too soon, and so that was the kind of the cleave point that we were like, okay, let's get some delegated authority. And I agree with you, Nico. We didn't do anything wrong. It's not that we took an approach and we stood up and said, here's an approach we'd like to try. And that approach it's a valid, like you said, legal approach. It's actually a pretty standard, pretty normal approach for doing this kind of stuff. But it is also true that it's something that we needed. We need the DReps to say it's okay for us to do some of the steps that we want to do, or to say, hey, we don't want you to do those things. And so that's where it's like, I guess it was important to have the conversation. Hindsight's 2020. I wish we could have had this conversation in July of last year. That would have been, my ideal. But we socialized the direction we were trying to go in to up until the point where the pushback was, don't do that approach. Let's come up with a different approach. And so the board was responsive to that. And I think that's what I like about the way that the board is structured right now, is the board was responding to a lot of community pressure and community feedback. I mean, you might have even seen one of the board members, Adam, he put out some pretty extensive work as to what he felt was going wrong. And so that I like to say the board wasn't unilateral. In fact, it was responsive, and it continues to be. There's updates going to the board at each board meeting to inform them of changes that are being made. So they've been. It's our board. It's as community, we have community elected board members, and we'll get to elect more of them over time. So that's that's Intersect. I feel like in being involved in its own mandate and its own future, and trying to find out where it best belongs here. And it does. If it gets delegated authority by the DReps, then that's a real direction for Intersect to travel in, rather than Intersect's best guess of where we should travel. And I personally will feel more comfortable once we're in that place. That helpful?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. And I appreciate, Phil, there were, like I said, the process we were using was a very common process. It's well documented and used across different industries, things of that nature. I would say that we still have to get delegated authority. That's going to have to be our number one thing. And so I have no qualms whatsoever with saying to the DReps, if I'm asked, to any DRep, if I'm asked, that yes, I believe that the process that we were building is a useful process and one that we can continue to follow up on if you as DReps vote for us to do it. That's the one break that I put there, and I have to stay firm on it because I do believe in our Constitution. Our Constitution gave that authority to the DReps, and they must make a decision as to how they want to use the authority that they've been given. And so once they have made that decision, I'm going to do everything in my power to do exactly the way that they want it. If that means that they say, do what you were doing this year and keep moving forward, that's what we're going to do. If they say, do what you were doing, but change this 2, 3, 4 things along the way, we're going to do that too. And I would say you as an individual, Phil, just like me as an individual, we should advocate for what we believe is best to our DRep that we delegate to and to any of the DReps that'll listen, right? We absolutely are in our rights as ADA owners to participate in this governance. And this is going to be a conversation that, that's an important one to have. And I think if we come out the other side of this conversation with a clearer picture, then we will have succeeded in this moment. I hope that helps, Phil. All right, Ken Eric, go ahead.
Yes. So is it okay that just to come up with like a suggestion here? Because it might be a stupid idea, but at least it's a suggestion. So basically, on common language, Intersect get stuck now in a little limbo now because they because they don't agree about numbers, beer budgets, for example. But so to continue to move on, from a strategic point of view, let's say as an administrator and doing the best for the community, we already know and have done a good fair research regarding the net change limit. It also states that, so we put forward that 250 or 300 million, it doesn't say that we have to spend all that ADA, so for the progress, so we are a little bit like this chicken and the egg state, and someone needs to take the initiative here. And would it be very stupid or strategic wrong to just put forward the net chain limit so we have a moving progress here? We shouldn't so just communicate. It's not for us spending, but this are, let's say, the framework that we can work within without harming the Cardano ecosystem, because we are not draining the treasury. I don't know. Just push this forward so we have at least a forward moving momentum, and then DReps can push forward. There will be info actions, and we can start the proposals regarding the budget.
Right. Well, and thanks for that, Keneric. I do know that there is a delay on the net change limit right now because there were 2 different types of net change limits that need discussing at this point, right? So Jose de Gamboa has a version that's a percentage-based version, and he's working to provide that text. So we're going to take that text that he provides, we're going to put that next to the 300, 350. And then I know I have to address Joe Allen because I know she was looking for some more information. She wants like the analyses that went behind the 350. And so we have been working to get get the permission from the people who make those analyses, because that's the thing. They give those analyses, and they, these are like treasury experts. They get paid to do these kinds of things, and there's ownership about, like, that belongs to this company or this other company. So there are concerns there about releasing that. I'm working on that, and we did give the raw data so people can make their own analyses. That is definitely available. And so what we're hoping to do now is get those. If we're able to get those analyses published, we will, and if not, we'll let people know why we couldn't. Right? It'll be one or the other. So that's one part of this that we're working on. The other part is, again, we're trying to support Jose de Gamboa so that he can put forth his model that has the percentage base, and then we want those two models to be given some time to be discussed back and forth. So these are, and they're both valid models. It's just a matter of what's more correct to the Constitution and what's more correct to what the DReps want. So we're going to put those out and let the discussions happen on those two, and then from that we'll be able to put the net change limit on chain from that point. Now, one of the and to address your concern on setting the limit, that's also something that we have to discuss with the DReps. Do the DReps want to build a budget and then set a net change limit and approve it and then the budget, or do they want to set the net change limit and say, here's our limit that we're not going to go past, and then assign the budget? And either is a valid option, but the question is going to be, which is the option that makes the most sense, for the DReps. And so again, we got to had to take a little bit of cautious here. If at the end of March we push out a net change limit because we've had a good discussion and the DReps agree, then we can do that. And while that net change limit is being decided, we can do the consolidation on the budget. That works timeline wise to keep the timeline on track. So too does if we just do the consolidation and then we put the net change limit and then wait 1 week and then start the budget 1 week later. Both of those would allow us to have kind of the same time frame, so we don't lose time by taking this time to discuss before we make those decisions.
Thanks, and I would also love to hear what the other participants here also think about it. Let's say, because it doesn't hurt to let's work out net chain limits. We're not going to guarantee to spend it all. We might have a budget on 200 million, and then we will have 100 million surplus on the net change limit, because it's just a boundary to secure the treasury. And then we'll move forward. You will get info action. Community will raise. We want to do this, yada yada yada, and yeah.
No, totally agree, and that's and so again, we are taking we're taking the lead of the DReps here, but we've laid out the possible models. So that's what my job today is, right? Is to lay out these possible models, these possible directions, and then listen. So, like you said, Ken Eric, if you guys have opinions on which of these is the right model, this is like today is definitely the time to start. Putting that out. If you don't want to put it out here, that's totally fine. If you want to put it on X, if you want to put it in the forum, wherever you want to place that information. But really, this is what this session's about: is hearing from everybody which way you want to go as a DRep. Nico, go ahead.
Thanks, Lloyd. And one thing I think many DReps probably are maybe not aware of, let's say maybe, is that the net change limit can also be changed. So, right, the fear right now is if we define a net change limit, and that would then not be sufficient enough to cover the most important core maintenance of Cardano and core development of Cardano, we would end up in another situation where we're basically stuck, right? Because you cannot raise, or basically the Constitutional Committee cannot approve a budget info action if it exceeds the net change limit, right? So that would then require, again, a 6 weeks time window where we have a new net change limit being voted on. And again, there's uncertainty if that gets immediately approved. And right, so that's why I think it is reasonable to wait with the net change limit until we at least know what can we roughly expect, right? And of course, that's a philosophical question, and people might disagree with that. But yeah, this is very important to keep in mind as DReps.
It is, and it is possible, although it's more work, but it is possible that we could put a net change limit out today, or say, 2 weeks once we, get this, decide between the percent based and the, and the dollar based or the ADA based. We could say put that out and it could get approved. And during the consolidation, the DReps could say, oh, we approved 300 million. But in reality, once we got all of these budget pieces together, we found this really cool thing that's out there, and we want to do that too. It would be good for us long term, and we want to invest in that as well. So we really need 350 or 375. Well, we could immediately file another net change limit. We could do it that day, and then you could even put a budget under that initial 300 that was, say, maintenance, and then put a second budget out after that new net change limit with a higher number goes out. You could then put another budget out. So we are actually pretty flexible in the way the system's designed. So it gives us all of those options. So even when we have a parameter like the net change limit that is a break, all the break really is are you sure you want to spend more? Because if you're sure, you can go ahead and increase your net change limit, and then you can spend more. The hard part will be if we have spending allocations that are done, and then we want to make a net change limit to reduce the spending. That's the one that's a difficulty. We can do it to the exclusion of the stuff we've already contracted, but it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to change the net change limit on something that's already committed to by the chain. So I think for that, the better action is to have a smart contract and do stop payments in a smart contract, which is something we are definitely working through as well. It's another whole area of this is the smart contract side of things that's well underway. The Monday yesterday, the budget committee approved the creation of the smart contract working group to start evaluating these potential smart contracts that are not potential; they're actually being built right now. That are intended to be shared with the community to be used as an option to be used to protect treasury withdrawals. So, and one of the features in that is like the idea of a council of some sort that can stop the payments on a project that is not fulfilling its obligations, and then just returning that fund, just those particular funds, to the treasury. So I like that smart contract idea. I think that's phenomenal. Devil's in the details, of course, but that'll be something that has to be defined in the budget proposals so that the DReps know what they're voting for. Go ahead, Canary.
Yeah, so as a DRep, the way I've been communicating with my community here in the Nordics, basically we have Facebook and all that, and I also have this weekly, 3 times a week live stream where I update the community about what's going on in the Cardano ecosystem. Here in Norway, we're very familiarized with, let's say, a net chain limit because we have the Norwegian Sovereignty Fund where we have a spending limit on it. So for them, it's common ground. They understand what we are talking about and what the intention with the net chain limit is. Of course, there are a lot of concerns regarding the budget, but they understand that, and at least I will support putting forward net chain limit, let's say 350. We have a budget now for about 276, and then we have as long as this comes forward in this net chain limit, that it is it covers the budget, the needs that we know about today. The numbers aren't nailed down. Is plausible as we see it now. A lot of processes that are documented and put a number on are duplicates. So actually, the number that we see today will come out less. And as I was saying, at least they understand that, and that for Norwegian, I'm not speaking for everyone, but we I think about 10% of the Norwegian community are exposed to ADA, either on centralized exchanges or they understand the net chain limit and would put it forward. And the only thing they are worried about is that if we don't spend the ADA, put it back to the treasury, and that's already clear in every budget proposals I've seen so far. And smart contracts, yes, that's even cool. They would even accept having a centralized point of managing fiat on-off ramp at this point, because we have to have audit on the smart contracts. There are a lot of the, let's say, the financial ecosystem surrounding the administrator that have to be cleared out, but they would accept not going full decentralized at this point. The most important for the Norwegian community is that we continue moving on and don't cause any additional problems for ourselves by not putting forward the net chain limit. I would love to hear the rest of the guys here's comment on that too, because I think that is a key point to put it forward, and then we even have the frames to work within when it comes to budget, and the community can raise their voices.
Thank you, Ken Eric. I can briefly speak to the fiat thing that, yes, that's still in work. The Zodia platform, the custodial platforms that we were already building will work for the fiat side. Fiat is still going to be the primary thing that most of the vendors are going to want to receive. It is what it is. We all, we all have power bills. We all have rent and, all of those other, expenses that we have to pay in payroll. And those things have to happen, in a fiat currency. So, some of what will happen will have to be in fiat, and that's something where Intersect is absolutely tooled up to handle that. And so again, that's where we hope that we're an obvious choice, as we're going forward, as the DReps look at it. Well, yeah, they've already got that built out. It works. So that's a safe place we can do for anything that's fiat related. Anything that's going to be stable coin or ADA related can go through these smart contracts, and we'll hopefully end up with a nice blend. Is what the hope is. So, but I appreciate where you and the members of your community are coming from. It's good to hear, that you guys are so well dialed in, and it is. I love that because you have that sovereign wealth fund, you have an understanding of what this is like. Some members of the community don't know what that looks like yet, and it's great that you guys can kind of provide your take coming from a country that has that feature already built in. It's wonderful. So I definitely appreciate the feedback there, Ken Eric.
I have one question, Lloyd. Is there already
Sure,
a
Nico,
place
go ahead.
where DReps can see the proposals that came in so far, or did already proposals come in through the form?
So far, there have been only test proposals. We have not received any actual new proposals. But I got to give a lot of credit to all the committees, because they did already reach out. Like, this has been an ongoing conversation for a long time. So there's a lot already there in the budget, but we had to cast the wide net to make sure we didn't miss anybody. And so far, there haven't been any new additions, but we're hopeful that there will be at least some that come through that approach. Once all of these submissions are in, we will release all of them at once. That's another thing where there is some legal considerations. They have to determine what bits and pieces can be released publicly, so that you don't have like anti-competitive stuff. Like if you release pricing, and then somebody else puts a proposal forward for less price, like that's a bit of a problem. So they're all going through what that really looks like, or what that disclosure has to be. But that's what's going on right now, is they're collecting any feedback that comes through that form, and so far it's all been tests. So That's another thing that I've heard from the team, similar to this kind of AMA. There's going to be like an office hour style, so that if anybody wants to fill out the form but it has trouble, you can come in and literally sit with them and fill out your form with help from Intersect. That is something that is gonna they'll be announcing the times of those shortly if they haven't already. So that'll be members of the procurement team. That's what they've kind of shifted toward doing now, is they've shifted toward helping with these forms. Go ahead, Nana.
Thanks, Lloyd. This brilliant discussion so far. I think I have a couple of questions I want to ask, and then see if I can get the answers, and then relay back to my community as a DRep. Now that we are kind of opening the budget proposal submissions to the entire community, what is our measure in terms of identifying which proposals are good, right? Going through this process, or which proposal probably should be considered for, the catalyst innovative phase instead of going through the normal treasury withdrawal phase, right? And then also, what kind of budget are we looking at for, some of these proposals? So for instance, are we looking to receive proposals that are requesting for more than a million ADA from the treasury? Or we are looking to, receive proposals that are actually requesting for whatever figure or whatever budget is it that they're looking at, right? I'm saying this because, for instance, in Catalyst, you can request, even as low as a 10,000 ADA, right, to work on your project. But do we want to allow people to, withdraw or request for 10,000 ADA from the treasury to work on such a project, or we want to, inspire them or encourage them to move those projects to Project Catalyst and then see if they can get some funding from there? So these are the two questions that I wanted to get clarity on. Thanks.
No problem. Thank you. Those are fantastic questions. So on the first one, it's open to anyone of any size on purpose. We don't want to put any limitations right now on what it is that you want to propose, and no matter the size. That's really up to the DReps to determine if they have the appetite to look at a smaller proposal that maybe could go under Catalyst, or if they want to, or if it's a very large project, saying that, oh gosh, that may be too big, we may not want to touch that at all. But those are the kind of conversations that can be had by the DReps based on what is received on the form. What I would say, this is that idea of where we all sit in our roles. Catalyst needs to be for innovation. It needs to be for new projects that don't have any kind of footing, anything. But would we, if somebody was building a tool for Cardano that lots of people use, but it only takes, say, 20,000 or 30,000 ADA a year to maintain because it's got very little in the needs of maintenance, would DReps look at that proposal and pay that proposal? Or would they, or also maybe they give that to the open source office with the maintainer retainer and say, go over there and do that through maintainer retainer, and we'll validate that one contract and let the open source office figure out what tools do that. You see what I mean? That's really what this time frame is all about, is getting everyone comfortable in what their role actually is. So we have the opportunity to keep Catalyst, and keep it as innovation funding. We have the opportunity of having a maintainer type of role where you have tooling that's used at a certain level in the community, and a certain amount of money from the community would keep that tool maintained and working well, and that could be an open source. We could be bringing up new developers who want to develop core and want to get paid to maintain things in the core, and that can be a totally separate thing that's handled either through OSC or TSC, for instance. So this really does come down to aligning with whose role is what in Cardano, and based on where the DReps are willing to engage and do the work. So is that helpful, Nana?
Yes, it is helpful. Thanks.
Thank you. Kenrick, how are you?
Doing very well. Thanks for all the hard work you're doing on this challenging process, right?
Yeah, definitely challenging. Good to hear from you, man. How you been?
Doing very well. Yeah, so I'm interested from the budget committee's perspective. Are there any known gaps between what you currently were, between the original budget plan and how the discussions have gone in the last month or so in terms of where unaddressed needs still remain? Is there anything that, we, and I'll just say, as one example, Fotrec maybe is looking at the L2 tooling as a kind of area where there's going to be a lot of future needs. But I'm kind of curious from the budget committee's perspective, where do you see the highest priorities that are still unaddressed?
Thank you. And it's funny because I was just talking about tooling because I've said it a couple times now that I think the biggest miss we had when we were first setting this all up and trying to get this off the ground back last year, June, July timeframe last year, the biggest miss we had was we didn't really have a place for people with existing tooling to come in and be able to get to request funding easily. So a chunk of the community didn't feel like it had anywhere it could go in order to do this. And that, hindsight's 2020. I hate that we missed that. Like it's looking back, it's such an obvious thing that we should have had in the list, but literally person after person after person, we just didn't see that one area. So that's like the number one kind of easy low-hanging fruit. I agree with you that a layer 2 ecosystem here is going to be very interesting. There's a little bit of that in the TSC. It's sprinkled throughout the TSC. You've got things like Midgard. You've got things like some more Hydra related stuff. So some of that's there, but I agree with you because it's more than just the node development portion of that's important. It's also the tooling for launching it and all those other things that are going to be super important. And like SDK is any kind of work like that'll get developers hands on it to be able to make it, and then service providers. All of those things are going to need maturing. So I definitely can see where that one's going to be useful. And we still, I think we have a ways to go yet on where we land on like how we're going to market things within Cardano, where those marketing budgets are going to come from. I think that's another one that we're still really having conversation on more than have actionable directions to go in yet. And that's okay. I think we'll get our feet under us and figure it out and get it wrong and and do a couple more iterations before we get it all right. I think it's gonna ultimately be easier to keep doing things like core maintenance and those things that we have processes behind. The hardest part for that is getting a group of different contractors who've done this work up to this point, have this expertise, and get them on the same page as to who's doing what part in this more public environment. I think I think it's a challenge, but I think it's one we'll face. So.
Okay, thanks. That's great input.
Thank you, Kendrick. Appreciate it. All right, we're down to the final 5 minutes, so I would like just to welcome and encourage any DReps. If you haven't spoken up yet today, we need your feedback as to the direction that we continue to move forward in. What do you think of this new direction? Where are the best places that Intersect can support you as a DRep, and where are the points in this that you want to maintain your authority that's delegated by the Constitution? Like we need to come to answering that question, and we're happy to take that from you, and take it from you in any way you're willing to give it. You can share it here, you can share it on X, you can share it on the Cardano forum, share it on the Discord server, any of those places. And I list those out because I know we check those every day. So those are the preferred places. But if you've got another place that you need us to look, you can also share what's the other places you need us to look, and we're happy to add that to the list.
Hello, Lloyd. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to say that the work that Intersect and especially you are doing is very important, and I really appreciate what you've done so far. and that the learnings keep coming, and that you listen and do everything you can to flesh out a process that works for everyone. I really appreciate that. And so far, I saw initiatives like CDEC popping up and trying to get projects that were currently not covered by the process to actually get access to it. And that's also one of the main things I'm concerned about, and that I want to see is that Intersect is or provides a point of contact with the form that you've posted that's given for any Cardano project that's willing to put time into this chain to get started. For us as a project, it was difficult to get a feeling for how to start, how to even get contacts and start. And not every project has the manpower and the capacity to follow everything and get familiarize themselves with the processes. And so a contact in Intersect to get started and to get help to have a smooth drive to get to the funding they and focus on the actual project that they want to deliver. That's important. So I really appreciate that this is now part of the process and part of Intersect, and we will put a proposal in most definitely. Thank you for your work.
Awesome. Thank you, Marcel. Really appreciate hearing that feedback. And yes, I do know the team's working on standing up a meeting similar to this that's just for getting people to get through the form. So whatever help we can offer, we don't want any project left behind. We want every project to have the opportunity to place their proposal before the DReps. And we want the proposals to make sense so the DReps can consume them. So that's the other side of this, that definitely from the DReps, what do you need to see in proposals? Obviously, the stuff we've done within Intersect can be a good guiding point. Is that enough? Or do you need more details on any particular part of a project? And those kind of questions we're happy to take from the DReps. And then from the project side, if you've got a proposal, please start filling out the form. And if you have any questions, reach out to us at Intersect. You can reach out to me directly on the Discord or Telegram, X, Radio Astro, everywhere. I will point you in the right direction and get you in front of the right people to help you get the form filled out so that you have the right to participate. You absolutely do. You're part of the Cardano community. We want to raise up your voice and get you in front of the DReps. All right, guys. Well, it looks like we're top of the hour. I appreciate all of your time today. Thank you for your time and attention on this. Your attention is your most important resource, and you shared it with me today. So I'm eternally grateful for you for doing so, because we're making Cardano better together. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.